Welcome back to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast with me, Johnny Pardo. Today, I welcome Mark, and I'm really looking forward to this. We're going to be talking about the power of words, the power of stories, and what's Mark's doing in the world to help people with this and much, much more. I'm excited to dive into today. So a quick introduction to Mark, then we'll dive in. So Mark England is a TEDx speaker and co-founder and head coach of Enlifted. He has been researching, presenting, and coaching on the power of words and stories for the past 18 years. Mark holds a master's degree in education and was an elementary school PE teacher before getting into personal development. So, welcome to the show today, Mark. Glad to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Johnny. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Awesome. So, Mark, be really interesting, first of all, to hear a little bit about what was your transition from going from like this traditional education, being a PE teacher, to actually moving into this place where you're really helping people in the personal development world with their stories and their words.
Yeah, the thing that got me into this professionally was the thing that has kept me in it professionally. And it's the same thing that grabbed my attention the first time I ever saw what we could put under the umbrella of transformational wordsmithing. Okay, transformation. What's that? Transformational wordsmithing. Psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, therapists, coaches, anybody that's helping someone improve the story that they're telling themselves is under that umbrella. The first time I ever saw it, I was over in Thailand in 2003. I moved over there in 2002, and I was supposed to be over there for a year. Ended up living over there for 10 years, which still sounds a little bit strange to say, take out a little bit. And the reason I went over there was for the Thai boxing. That was my thing in college and out of college, and I won a couple of state titles, and also got into some MMA fights. I was doing well on the local amateur circuit on the East Coast, and I was going to go pro. And I thought, well, let's go over to Thailand for a year and polish up the skills, and then come back. And that's my life path. And that's not what happened. I was 6 months after I moved over there, middle summer 2002. I'm having my second knee surgery, and the whole thing stopped, and I turned into a grown-ass man baby. That's a technical term, and right, and I used that fail as what I thought was a fail. I used that scenario at the time as the final piece of damning evidence in a case I was secretly making against myself, which is not new. Okay, many people do this secretly in their head. It's called telephobia, the fear of not being good enough. And that was by far the biggest move I'd ever made. I'd only had my passport for a couple of years. Okay, and then I moved to Thailand. I had 3 going away parties. It was this really big deal. And nobody even knew where the hell that was. Half my grandparents thought I lived in Taiwan. Anyway, so yeah, I move over there and fall flat on my face, and use that as the final straw in a case that I was making against myself, that I was a born loser. Something was wrong with me. I'm not sure what's wrong with me, but something's wrong with me. I know there has to be somewhere that I can't fix, and that I'm doomed to fail. And now I've got the all the proof I'll ever need. And then because of that, I also had all the villains, right? Because that's what the victim mentality does. I had a dumpster fire of a victim mentality in my head, just lit on fire and raging. And I had all the villains to blame until it changed. Good change doesn't happen overnight. And the beginning of me learning, because it's a skill, the beginning of me learning to tell myself a better story to myself about myself. Okay, that's Enlifted's definition of mindset. There's a tons of mindset definitions out there. And in my personal and professional opinion, Enlifted has the best one because it's the most simple. It's the story that we tell ourselves. So everybody listening to this, your mindset, it's the story that you tell yourself. All you coaches out there, your clients' mindset, it's the story that they tell themselves. And that story is made of words. And the day that I started to learn that one, I'm telling myself a story, I've got, I'm participating in it and I can make some changes in it. Oh, and by the way, what it's made of was when I went to an emotional detoxification workshop one night and I watched a guy he turned this woman's very public and embarrassing breakup story on its head with one word. The sentence that held the whole thing together was, "He did that to me. He did that to me." Look at the words. He's in the picture, did that to me. Me's in the picture. So she was in the he's in the picture, she's in the picture, and he's the villain, she's the victim. He's doing by the way, it happened 40 years ago. Okay, this particular breakup. And by the way, it could have happened 44 years ago. Time doesn't apply to the emotional body. We can just keep playing these same stories over and over and over again, especially if we keep the stories in the head. It's bound to happen. And he said, "Cool, take out that last word and put in the word himself." And she goes, he did that to himself? It went up at the end. It's called up talk. And then the breath released. She goes, he did do that to himself, and then started talking about how weird the guy was and it was never going to work out anyway. And she walked out of there with a completely different story and way that she saw that scenario and herself because they changed one word. And I thought to myself, that was one of the right. That's exactly what I did. I thought to myself, that's one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. And I need to learn this. One, I did not expect to, I didn't see what was coming, right? And I just knew that two things. That was fucking awesome. Can I drop F-bombs on here?
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay, great. That was fucking awesome. And I need to work on my story. And that was in 2003, and I turned into a personal development junkie, and just got my hands on every book that I could read, and went to all the workshops, and changed diets, and like, oh, I just went all in, and then I went pro January 17th, 2007. That was the first day of my first full-time day at work as a coach. And I've been doing it since, as in helping people learn about the power of their words and stories and make some changes to that story. Yeah, still going. I mean, I got a goal. I got a goal of the amount of time that I'm going to do this for. I've been doing it 18 years. I mean, I can talk about that. We can talk about the definition of the victim mentality by definition. That's very rare. A lot of people talk about mindset. That's great. Let's keep doing it. And what is it? That's a very interesting exercise to ask people that are, because those are the words they use, really big on mindset. What's mindset? Go, everybody go grab a couple of mindset coaches and ask them, what is it? And very likely you're going to get a big picture, philosophical, clunky answer, or none at all. And so it's really hard to work on something if you don't know what it is. One, what is it? Two, what's it made of? Okay. And then three, people talk about the victim mentality quite a lot.
Yeah.
I can recite that thing in my sleep. And that right there, that has historically proven to be a very valuable thing for people to listen to, because they're like, oh, that makes sense. It makes sense. So I can talk about the definition of victim mentality. I can tell you some stories of people that I've helped with sentences, changing single sentences, prison sentences, mental prison sentences that changed the way they saw their dad or their mom or their body or themselves. Yeah.
Wow.
What's a good direction, Johnny?
I'm excited for both of those things. I think, but like definitely would love to dive into the victim story.
Okay.
But I just wanted to touch on something, Mark, just like my understanding, and I never assume anything, but like when people, is it often that people are unconscious of their story and their words a lot of the time?
Majorly. And it has nothing to do with intelligence, and it has nothing to do with intent. It has everything to do with education. So this conversation that we're having right now, you can file all of it under important shit you didn't learn in English class in high school. I don't know anyone that learned how to use their words to stay focused on what's important and keep the drama low and build themselves up in their imagination and create feelings of confidence and competence and unlock their breath, because that's what happens when you get control of the words that you're using. Oh, and by the way, turn yourself into a very good listener, which is half of everything. Good listeners have way better lives. Okay. Bad listeners usually have way worse lives, because that's the through line for relationships, and relationships are everything, personal and professional. When someone, it's mechanical. When someone's breath is trapped in their chest, which is a direct correlation to people not paying attention to the words they use. Breath trapped in the chest, it's called amygdala hijack. Listening tanks, okay? You lose access to your creative faculties, and you have way more monologues instead of dialogues. And so yeah, people are very unconscious of the words they're using specifically, how fast those stories are going. That's a very important lever to be able to pull when it comes to changing mindset. People are very unconscious of how they're breathing. The better you breathe, the better stories you're going to tell, the better you're going to sound. Okay. And then inflect, and a bunch of other stuff. And like I said, it's not like people aren't, because I'm at the best average when it comes to the IQ. If I can understand this stuff, anybody can understand this stuff. Yeah, and that's really good news, because anybody can learn to use their words a little bit better.
Simplicity, as we're talking about
Yes,
at the start of the show. Your favorite word. One of
love
your
that word.
favorite words. You love
One
it.
of my favorite words for sure.
Yeah, I love it, Mark. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to hear your view on, or a little bit about what the victim mentality is for you, and how maybe we can snap out of that.
Okay, yep. Uh, there's a variety of ways I could answer that. Um, as in the specifically, what is the victim mentality to me?
Mm.
To me, the victim mentality is the biggest existential threat and problem and opportunity that humanity has got going on right now. And if if we are able to individually first, okay, and then collectively dismantle that victim mentality, we've got an opportunity to avoid what could be the greatest catastrophe humanity could could ever face, which is transhumanism. Are you familiar with transhumanism?
No, I'm not.
Transhumanism is the merger of man and machine, where you ever seen Star Trek?
Yeah.
You ever seen the Borg?
Oh, I can't remember the Borg.
The Borg is okay, so think pasty white people. You can look this up on the internet, everybody. Look up transhumanism. Look up transhumanism. Yeah, look up the Borg. So imagine like wall paint white people, pasty white, with the soul sucked out of their eyes, and machine parts coming out of everything. Baby, you didn't think this conversation was going this direction. I didn't either, and I do talk about this. Um, uh, Babies are made; they're grown, not made. There's no dancing. There's no warmth to humanity. There's the soul has been sucked out of humanity, and it's basically a hive-minded, totally controlled, omniscient, technocratic hellscape. Imagine humanity with no warmth. That's transhumanism. I don't care what, because I've been researching this stuff for over 15 years. Yeah, along with the words and stories. And so the formula is humanity plus technology plus the victim mentality equals transhumanism, because the victim mentality goes hand in hand with not being good enough. And if you're not being good enough, then you're going to basically do anything to feel good enough, including uh, merging with machines in a very dangerous way. Or we could have Star Trek, which is humanity plus technology plus a hero's mentality or an architect's mentality, and it will look like Star Trek. So we're flying around the stars, assuming that the world isn't flat. Some people think it is, and babies are made the old-fashioned way, and people have retained their humanity, and it's a healthy application of technology. So that for me, okay, it's one of the biggest problems and opportunities facing humanity. Not and let's scale down a little bit. The victim mentality, it's what trashes families more than the victim mentality? What drives addiction more than the victim mentality? Because the victim mentality and a telephobia, the fear of not being good enough, go hand in hand.
Mm.
Tony Robbins knows a little bit about this stuff. He says the fear of not being good enough, which is a telephobia, that's the technical name for it. 95% of everything comes down to that. And those two things are completely interlinked. And how many people, how much self-sabotage is, if someone's into developing mindset, then they've definitely come across their own levels and flavors of self-sabotage. How much self-sabotage is driven by the victim mentality? How much wasted time is driven by the victim mentality? How much art is left on the table from the victim mentality? How much fun has been sucked out of the room and people's lives and relationships? How many divorces have happened because of the victim mentality? How many alcoholics have wrapped the car around the tree because of the victim mentality? Because they feel like shit about some things that happened in their life, maybe when they were a child, and they think no one will ever really love me. I'm a victim of circumstance, and I'm just going to pour alcohol on this thing so I don't have to face the reality of what my deepest, darkest fears are about myself. And oh, well, there's an oak tree, and I just smashed my car into it. So if you start extrapolating this out, forget endgame crazy sci-fi possibilities. Let's just go, in our own home and in our own heart and the neighbor across the street. And it wants everybody. It's the worst multi-level marketing program out there. The victim mentality wants to infect everything, and it does it with words and sounds. Now, the definition, this is the verbatim definition of the victim mentality. Most people have never heard the definition of the victim mentality, much less written it down. And if you're listening to this podcast, which you are because you're listening to it, get a pen and a piece of paper and write this down, because you'll put yourself in a very exclusive club. So the learning pyramid, everybody, is 30, 50, 80. 30, 50, 80. We remember 30% of what we hear, 50% of what we write, 80% of what we turn around, teach, share, explain. I'll recite the definition of the victim mentality 2 times, once slow, and then I'll do it again a little faster with some polish. And if you've got a pen and a piece of paper, write it down, because you're now in a very exclusive club. And then I'll do that, Johnny, and I'll hand the microphone back to you, and we'll go in whatever direction you want to. So here's the definition of the victim mentality, verbatim, done once and slow. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. Here it is again, a little faster with some polish. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends, it's a tendency, everybody. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. A person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends, circle that word, on a habitual, underline that word, thought process and attributions. That second sentence is right between the eyes, right where it belongs. The victim mentality depends, as in it has to have a habitual, which accurately implies duration and addiction, thought process. What's that? Glad you asked. Everyone has one. It's how you use your words, how you put your words together. That's your thought process. And then attributions. What's an attribution? It's a characteristic. And the second characteristic that we pay attention to after the words, well, the first characteristic we pay attention to after the words and lift it is breathing. The victim mentality traps people's breath in their chest, and then from there you get myopically focused on the worst parts of fill in the blank. Charlie Chaplin said, life viewed under a microscope is a tragedy, viewed from afar is a comedy. I can give a real world example of someone I was working with semi
Yeah.
recently.
Yes,
Okay.
please. Yeah.
This woman. We just went super big picture. Okay. And let me get this on the table too. This is a very important part in my personal and professional opinion as the definition, not a working definition, the definition of the victim mentality. Get that on the table when it comes to mindset, because that's usually how people get into this stuff. Most people do not get into personal development when the sun is out and everything is good and they've got this. No, they've got a problem. Something's wrong. They're struggling. They're stuck. And then so their entry point into researching personal and professional development usually comes through some aspect of dealing with the victim mentality, and then having the definition there and then getting into the words that force people to create it. Now we've got an interesting conversation going on. Now we've got a practical conversation going on, as opposed to big picture philosophy and neuroscience. That's only going to get you so far, everybody. Okay. So this woman came in. I'll give you a couple examples. This woman came in and she wanted to work on her relationship patterns. She said, I've had the same relationship with 5 different men. Think about that. I've had the same relationship with 5 different men. And then so we got into the specifics of some of those relationships, as in specific examples of her creating the same dynamic of seeing these guys as not being emotionally available enough and rejecting her. That was her vantage point. And so it created this theme set of feelings and emotions. And I asked her, hey, when was the first time you ever felt this lump on your top of your chest? Oh, well, that reminds me of when my parents sat me down and told me they're getting a divorce. And then my dad left. I didn't see him for a couple of years. Oh, and there were some other specific memories in that whole scenario of fighting and violence in the house and stuff. And we got into those stories, and the spell, Webster's definition of a spell is a word or a combination of words of great influence. The spell that held that whole thing together was this. Everybody write this down. Write this down. This is what she said. Write this down. Some of y'all are going to have an experience. If you write this down, if he had loved us more, everything would have been different. I'm going to say that 3 times. Write it down. If he had loved us more, everything would have been different. If he had loved us more, everything would have been different. And look at the words. Remember that first story? He did that to me. He's in the picture. I'm in the picture. If he's in the picture, had loved us more, so he's in the picture doing something or not giving them the love that they wanted in the way that they wanted, everything, the entirety of everything would have been different. And she was very upset. And I had her take her pen. Now, everybody, take your pen and scratch out the word us and write in the word himself. Exactly. Now we've got an experience of what I'm talking about when it comes to changing the words of the stories that you're telling yourself. That's your mindset. Your mindset is the story you tell yourself, and that story is made of words. And if you want to work on your mindset, 1, you need to know what it is, and 2, what it's built of. And then once you do, now you can play the game. The look on her face before the tears started pouring out of her eyes was well, it's one of the reasons that I'm involved in this line of work, because it fascinates me. I'm attracted to this work. I have been since day one.
Can tell.
And it's a gift, man. It's like you can't talk yourself. Attraction is not a choice, everybody. It's a gift. You can't talk yourself into being attracted to someone. You can't talk yourself out of being attracted to someone. It's either there or it's not. It's the same thing with stuff. Why do people love fiddles? You know, why are some people obsessed with CrossFit? Why do some people's whole lives revolve around scuba diving? Why do some people love Ferraris but they hate Mercedes? It's like we're attracted to what we're attracted to. Okay. And this work has held my attention the whole time. And part of it is just, I find it absolutely fascinating that I can put some different squiggles and different sounds into me or help someone else do it with them. And the whole thing changes. The whole thing, meaning how I see the situation and myself in it, how I feel, the energy that I create, how I breathe. The look on her face, like I said before, she burst into tears, and it was for a very good reason. It's called releasing. Um, it was a half second, maybe three-quarters of a second, of just a pure astonishment. If he had loved himself more, because then, if he had loved us more, that's how you force yourself to take things personally. That's the formula for taking things personally. I don't care how over she is or tired she is of feeling like shit. If somebody uses those words, if they put those words together, they're getting the pain. The universe doesn't care. It's like it's neutral. It's like, oh, okay, cool. You want 2 + 2 = 4? Yeah. You want to add two and two together? Great, you're getting four. You want to say she never lets me think for myself? Great, you're getting the victim mentality. You want to use a bunch of soft talk? Maybe one day I'll start my own podcast. Hopefully, you, Johnny, did not use those words, okay? Or at least at some point in time used solid words. I'm starting a podcast. Soft talk. Soft talk isn't, where is that? Yeah, I'm not even at my house. I'm at my buddy's house in Richmond. I'm picking up a friend tonight, and I've been talking about this shit for so long. Soft talk. We'll,
I'm
we'll
glad
finish on
you,
this.
yeah, I'm glad you touched on soft talk. I was going to ask you about that because
Dude,
there's
yes.
so many words that we could set
Yeah,
ourselves up not to win.
dude, how about lose profoundly? And what we just did with those first two, he did that to me, and if he had loved us more, everything would have. Those are projections. That's where most of the venom lies, everybody. That's where the strongest emotional responses lie. That's where most people's white knuckle grip really is. Soft talk. So I recommend getting to those later, even though they're spiritual hammers on your head. Soft talk, which we'll get to in a second. So she goes, if he had loved us more, if he had loved himself more, everything would have been different. And great. Take out everything and put in he. If he had loved himself more, he would have been different. And now everybody's out of the picture. It's just him, and his lack of attention and addictive personalities and the cheating. All that had everything to do with him and nothing to do with her as a 7-year-old girl, and definitely nothing to do with all the men out there in the world, because she had this idea running that can't trust men. They're going to leave.
Does it always come back to like early years, Mark, or is there some
A lot of it does.
cases where not? Yeah.
Lot of it does. There's, of course, there's the backstory. There's the formative years, and then there's also someone could do a perfect job of cleaning that up, or let's just say they didn't. I haven't met many of them. Let's just say they had a perfect life. If they start using those words right here, right now, they're going to begin the process of lighting their head on fire. So it's where we've been and how where we've the stories that we've tell ourselves about our past and how we're using our language right now.
I love that. Yeah, it gives you so much power, to choose
Thank
your
you.
words.
Thank you. And this is such it's as deep as you want it to be, everybody, and it's also super basic. It's super basic. You know, I've been in the conversations about plant medicines, you know. There's how about 10-day meditation retreats? How about all kinds of quote unquote higher level ways of going about working on yourself? Yes. Yes. If you got the pull to go do whatever when it comes to, bettering your life, cool. Pay attention to that. And also pay attention to your words. Okay. Because it's a daily occurrence. You
Mm.
telling yourself stuff. You sending texts. You making noises out of your face towards other people. And it's so easy to overlook. That's another thing. You know why? Because it's so common and ordinary. Oh, these words I'm using, it couldn't possibly, you know, keep me talking myself out of doing what I really love to do. There's no, it's got to be something else. It's got to be something big. So let's talk about simplicity. Most people think their problems are super big and super complicated. And because the problems are super big and complicated, the solution must be equally as big and complicated. And I'm here to tell you no, that 95% of the time, that's a low number. The solution to your big complicated problems is simplicity. It's simple stuff. It's the words you're using. It's the words you've combined to create the stories of what happened when you were 9 or 5 or 12 or all of the above. And nobody's going to change those words for you.
Mm.
Your mom said don't play with your food. Mark England's telling you play with your words. And how to make that real easy on yourself, pick up a pen and get them out of your head because they go so much slower. So words kept in the head, that's where stories go the fastest. There's 3 levels of storytelling. Words kept in the head, they go the fastest. They're also the most disorganized. When we speak, there is structure to the English language, and it's way slowed down comparatively to stories in the head. And then the slowest form of storytelling, I mean, chiseling shit into hieroglyphs, that would be slower. And the slowest form of storytelling is writing. Is writing. And now those words are externalized. They're finite. They're still. And then you can do some really cool shit, like take a word out and put a word in and go, huh, wow, that feels a lot better.
I love that. That's such a simple, effective. Again, it's
Simple.
not an over complicated problem.
Oh, no.
We're taught in the world, I
If it
think, a
was, I
lot
wouldn't be
to
able to
make.
understand it.
Yeah, I think we're taught a lot in the world that things complicated, but it really isn't from what you're sharing. So, Mark, I really value what you shared today. It's been amazing. And
Do we
if
want to
you're
finish with
list
this?
if you're listening, we're just holding up a board of soft talk keywords, which we're going to finish off with today.
Johnny,
So yeah,
read these out to everybody. Everybody,
yeah,
this is the gateway drug to the rest of your language. If you got a pen and a piece of paper, write these words down
yeah.
and then put it up somewhere where you're going to see it, like the fridge, for 3 months. If you put these up for 3 months, you'll thank yourself forever.
So the soft talk keywords we've got held up, if you're listening, are probably, feels like, guess, maybe, could, might, possibly, sort of, kind, hopefully, try. I had a guest on about that. One day, should, and almost like.
It's almost like I'm procrastinating. Maybe I need to get back in the gym. One day I'm going to ask her out. It's you start putting these into. We do this really fun exercise in our workshops. Usually we end with it. We'll go, all right, everybody, write down a goal, one full sentence, something you really want to do. People are like, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to vacation to Jamaica. I'm going to start my coaching business. I'm going to get my black belt in jujitsu. And I'm like, cool. You over there with what's your goal? I'm gonna get my black belt in jujitsu. Perfect. Put the word sort of in there. Huh? Yeah. Put the word sort of in there. I'm sort of gonna get my black belt in jujitsu. Yeah, perfect. What did that do to the energy? Oh, it turned it into a joke. Yeah. You over there. What's your? I'm gonna write a book. Um, Put the word maybe in there. I'm maybe gonna write a book. And it starts to go up at the end too. It's called up talk, right? And they're like, well, it just feels like a joke. I'm like, yeah, guess what? Those words are in your language. I promise you. And they're doing things.
Love that. So holding those words in front of you, and then just each day, and just making sure you take them out of your vocabulary or catching yourself.
Just a yeah. Take out a maybe here and take out a almost like there and a sort of there and a guess there. I guess I'm drinking too much coffee. Take out the guess. Yeah, I am. I'm drinking too much coffee. And then you start to have an experience of going, wait a minute. I'm just playing with some words and I'm getting a very different experience over here. Wonder what else there is to learn about the story I tell myself and what it's made of.
It's fascinating, the words. Yeah, like I mentioned, we had a guest on, Carla, and she was talking about the use of the word try and banning it from her life and the difference it had made. And it was the try is almost like not making you accountable. It's like, I'm going to try and finish that for the end of the week. Or it's, I am going to finish that for the end of the week. Or if you really know it's not possible, it's like, you admit you're not going to do that by the end of the week, but it's taking away that accountability and just the use of that one word, but all those other words just have such an impact on us. I can just feel it even thinking about it.
Likewise.
No, Mark, I really appreciate everything you shared. I know you do a whole lot more with people and you've got all sorts out there to offer and your services. So as we wrap up today, is there maybe a final point you want to share with us or recap from today's episode around the power of words and sentences, stories? And where can the listener find you if they want to reach out to you and get hold of your work?
Cool. I'll reiterate that point about soft talk. Write those words out, everybody. If you need to, rewind the podcast and listen to them and write them down and put them up. Put them up where you're going to see them. Okay. And you'll get more out of that practice than most books you'll read on mindset. Just that one thing, because it'll get you thinking about your thinking. Alan Watts was the greatest Zen teacher the West ever had and likely ever will have. And he said, when you learn to think about your thinking, you become alive in a new way. And if you want to make some improvements on your mindset, then guess what? You're going to be using different words. Promise, promise. Enlifted. So here's our website. We certify coaches. That's our business. We have a coaching certification company. I teach all the certs. Enlifted, ENLIFTED.me. And then Instagram at Enlifted Coaches. And I once or twice a month, depending on the volume of followers, I send everybody a personal voicemail that follows us. And strike up a conversation with them on Instagram. Super fun. I love the people I meet through this work. It's because most people don't want to think about their thinking. They don't want to invest. They're not taking or spending. Invest the time to go, wait a minute. What words am I using right now? How can I do this better? Most people don't want to learn about that. And so some people do. And I find the people that do want to think about their thinking, they're generally way more interesting. So hit me up on Instagram and I'll hit you up right back.
Awesome. I love it, Mark. And what I'm going to do also is list the soft talk words into in the description as well. So for the listener, you can just grab them from the description as well as all of Mark's details to get in touch with Mark. So once again, Mark, a massive thank you for coming on
today. My pleasure,
today.
Johnny. Thank you.
Awesome. So that concludes today's episode. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.